Peter King is with us, Football Morning in America. The Peter King podcast this week, Ed Werder and Dan Orlovsky, that is on iTunes and all sorts of different platforms with Peter. I want to turn the attention to Cliff Kingsbury. The average lifespan of an Arizona Cardinal coach without the last name of Whisenhunt or Arians is about 3 years. I'm not sitting here today going down the path of it's time to get after Cliff Kingsbury. I'm merely bringing up that the next 4 weeks at Dallas, Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, Seattle. So the road gets very difficult. He is 7-12-1. He's about a year and a half into his deal, about the average. And I think it's time now to say, okay, what exactly is Cliff Kingsbury all about out here? Because I see Matt Rule in Carolina, how he went from college to pro, and he's been terrific. Pete Carroll, of course, is the one that everybody points to on the college to pro guy. Peter, I don't know if you can make an evaluation of Cliff, but I think on a national stage this Monday night for him and then Seattle 6 days later is really a measuring stick and a coming out for what is this guy exactly all about?
You know, I'm gonna answer that in two ways. The first of which is a bit of a cop-out. Okay, like my feeling about judging coaches is the same way. Look, the early returns on Matt Rule are fantastic. You know, he loses his best player and he enters this year without a couple of franchise players in Luke Kuechly and Cam Newton having to rebuild all over his roster. And, you know, what has he done without Christian McCaffrey? He's won 3 in a row. How does that happen? I don't know. But at the same time, you know, I don't know how he's going to stand the test of time. And I don't know if the Carolina Panthers are just a pleasant surprise or a very good team. It's just too early to know that. It's a little bit the same with Kingsbury because I think last year when you exited the season in 2019 and you saw what you saw with the Arizona Cardinals and you saw this sort of long losing streak, mostly I would say because the defense, you know, basically was letting down the offense. They were, you know, giving up 30 or 34 almost every week, you know. Yep. And then at the end, you saw signs of kind of significant hope. When you beat Seattle by 2 touchdowns in Seattle, regardless of what Seattle has or doesn't have on the line, and then you play a team that you think right then is kind of a mirror image of you to end the season, the Rams, and you play pretty well. You lose, but what I remember about the end of last season is that the arrow was definitely pointing up for the Cardinals.
It's fair.
And as I go into this year, and now as we've gone 5 weeks into this season, and it's unfair because you even if you beat the Jets by 50, it really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
The Jets are so lousy. So I'm not positive what I think of this team yet. And I think the one disappointing thing was in this season is not losing at Carolina. It's losing to Detroit at home. You know, that to me was a head-scratching loss. The other thing that to me has been a head-scratcher is I don't quite understand. You know, this is last year. I remember before the year going to training camp of the Cardinals. It was later. It was one of my last trips. And I remember sitting on the back of a golf cart with Cliff Kingsbury and talking about the kind of team he was going to be. And he just made an offhand comment like, you know, we are going to be able to run the ball and run it well. And that probably was one of the biggest surprises of the season last year. Mm-hmm. When you see how incredibly dominant they were running the ball. You know, I forget whatever it was, 4.8 or yards a carry. I mean, it was huge. And I remember thinking, man, Kenyon Drake, 5.2 yards a carry. And I remember thinking to myself, what did the Dolphins miss about him and all that? But anyway, that was a great get for them. And now he's running a little bit with cement shoes this year.
Yep.
And so you could either think that, okay, teams have really gone to school on Cliff Kingsbury now. Now it's time for Cliff Kingsbury, especially coming up against the schedule that he's coming up with. Now you have to see, okay, what are you going to do when people have a good read on you? How are you going to play? What are you going to figure out? Same thing with Kyler Murray. How are you going to play when people have sort of figured out who you are? And there's absolutely no way, I mean, it happens, but they're going to do everything in their power to not let him get beyond the line of scrimmage and have a little bit of an open patch of ground in front of him. So I don't know. Those are things I'm thinking about, but I'm mostly very bullish and encouraged by what I've seen in the Cardinals under Kingsbury. And I think it was, I don't want to say an inspired hire. It was a different hire,
Yep.
But I think it's a very good hire, and they're going to get better.
Before I get you out of here, and I appreciate your time as always, Peter King with us, Football Morning in America. Make sure you check out his column and, of course, the Peter King podcast. Andy Dalton, a couple of weeks ago you brought up Josh Rosen, completely different story. And then we saw Alex Smith on Sunday, and it was terrific and heartwarming and everything that we love about sports. Andy Dalton was a guy that was beat up on the scrap heap in Cincinnati, goes to Dallas, the awful injury to Dak. I'm just curious your view of Andy Dalton coming into this Monday night game where he's going to be the guy for Mike McCarthy.
I think Andy Dalton will play fine. He has always been an efficient player. Toward the end in Cincinnati, he did not play well. And I would say the biggest reason it wasn't Andy Dalton as much as it was a terminally ineffective and leaky offensive line. And now he goes to Dallas, which also has a leaky offensive line because of all the injuries. But on the other hand, you've also got Amari Cooper, C.D. Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Is there a better 1-2-3 combination right now at receiver in the NFL? I doubt it. I mean, the Cardinals could argue, but their 2 and 3 are not better than the Cowboys' 2 and 3. So, I look at this and say they're going to be fine on offense. Their problem right now is the defense.
It's awful.
Giving up 36 points a game. Andy Dalton is not going to have an issue, I don't think, with keeping them competitive offensively. But just like Dak Prescott found, the most amazing thing to me about the Cowboys is they've won 2 games. In those 2 games, they scored 40 and 37 points. They won those games by 1 and 3 points, respectively. And so that is a recipe for failure. And somebody asked me in the league this week on Monday about the NFC East and how bad it was, and I said I honestly think that a 6-10 team could win that division. And I mean, that sounds incredible. Yeah. I will not be surprised. I'll be surprised, I guess, a little bit if a 6-10 team wins it. I will definitely not be surprised if a 7-9 team wins it, because there are fatal flaws on every one of those 4 teams.
Really interesting stuff. As always, appreciate your time. Stay safe. Thanks, Peter.
All the best, Brad. Take care.